This week on Winchester's Deadly Passion, Melissa Bachman sets out for a little early season whitetail hunting. This is a time when scouting can pay dividends as many deer are still in their early season patterns and green food plots are key. Well, that's exactly where Melissa is set up, and her opening day hunt is coming together perfectly in Illinois. Only a short drive away, the bucks are on the move in Missouri as well, and she's right on target.
Well, we just got done with an extremely tough hunt in Kansas. It's early season, all the typical problems. Hot weather, lots of food, and strong winds. But now we're headed to Illinois to my favorite little hunting hole, Golden Triangle whitetails. The reason why? Well, it's pretty simple. I've killed a 200, a 174, a couple of 150s, and I've seen the photos of this year's trail camps. There are some giants. Tomorrow morning's opening day, and I can't wait to get out there.
Now, this was a little bit of a drive, but I wanted to be sure to get there for opening morning. I've been waiting for this day since, well, probably since the day the season ended last year. When we got into camp, I once again shot my bow just to make sure nothing had gotten knocked loose on the ride, and we were ready for morning. Now, opening day morning, the biggest thing for me, what stand was I going to sit? I had a ton of options, but there's one field in particular that I knew produces some giant bucks. We had enough stands set for any wind direction. We just had to figure out what the wind was in the morning and set the stand accordingly. The first morning, the oak tree was up to bat. We had a strong north wind and the temperatures, well, they were pretty cold for opening day. This time, we're looking at 35, 40 degrees. As I'm sitting there, the sun was coming up, a couple of does came out onto the field and starting to feed. Now, the trail cams had shown that a lot of deer come in this area more toward the evening. So I wasn't too bummed out, but I still would have liked to seen a couple of bucks. As I sat there, I decided as the wind started swirling, it's probably time to get out of the stand and regroup for the evening. I've been hunting in Illinois for several years now, and there's no question it is my favorite place to go. I hunt with Golden Triangle Whitetail Outfitters every year, and I've had some great success. 3 years ago, I was lucky enough to come late season after everyone else had left and I was done working and hunt some bucks. Now, late season can be tough and there's a lot of challenges, but I was concentrating on a food source. I knew there was a huge bean field with a big buck in the area. Now, the question was, can I find him and will he come out during daylight hours? The good thing about late season, these bucks need food. They've been run down, they don't have a lot to eat, and they need to get their weight back up. So the big boy showed up, and a big boy he was. 202 inches he ended up scoring, a beautiful buck. Now that was my biggest buck ever with a bow, but I was also lucky enough to take 2 other bucks with my muzzleloader. Another one that scored over 170 inches and a 150-inch buck. On the 170-inch buck, I was coming during a time when I had nobody else around, so I decided I'd film this one myself. I was sitting on the same field that we're going to be hunting on this trip. It is known for some really big bucks. Well, the big buck came out right before dark, and I was filming myself, and I actually thought about maybe not shooting him because I wasn't sure if I was getting good enough video. But after I looked him over with the binoculars, 2 or 3 minutes went by, I decided this was not a buck to pass. And once I made the shot, I went up there and he was a beautiful deer, over 170 inches, and the coolest part, my dad was hunting right down the road, so he filmed a little bit for me at the end. But overall, being able to take a big buck and film it yourself, that's a lot of fun.
Winchester's Deadly Passion is presented by Winchester Ammunition, Thompson Center, Cuddyback Digital, Bog Pod, Cabela's, She Outdoor Apparel, and Hunter Safety System.
Now I've just reset this stand for my afternoon sit. This morning I was sitting just southwest of here on the same field. Now the reason I'm changing, I watched the does do something a little bit differently and my trail cams back it up. So I've moved my stand just a little bit to make it set perfectly. And you can't be afraid to change things as you go because the deer change and you need to change too. After making a few changes to the afternoon stand, I went back to the truck and got ready for the afternoon. Now, I knew this was a great spot for the evening. My confidence was high, and I had seen the photos of these big bucks. Well, this spot should be especially good again this season. The Illinois River is flooded down below you. What that means for me, the deer that are down below are all getting pushed up into the hardwoods, and I've got a food plot for them. Now, one thing about early season hunting, it can be hot. Today, it's almost too hot for a hat. I doubt I need all these extra clothes, but better to be prepared. And hopefully, it's not too hot for these bucks to come out and get a little food. They probably won't be moving towards until late, but as long as they move, I should be in business. As I'm walking up the hill, the temperatures are really heating up. This is the type of weather that's usual for opening day, not that 40-degree freezing weather of the morning. But the deer are used to this. They're still in their summer feeding patterns, and this warm weather, well, hopefully it would keep them in those same patterns I had been watching throughout the season. As I got to my stand, I raised up my bow, got everything situated, and now it was waiting time. After a few hours of sitting and questioning whether my stand was in the right place, the wind was right, if the deer would show up, I was starting to think, we're getting into prime time and there are no deer still here. Not a doe, not a buck, nothing. Got a small buck coming right here. Not a second after I finished these thoughts, a flicker of an ear of a buck coming my way. Now the good thing in the early season, when the bucks start coming, there's usually more following. So I looked at the first buck, not a shooter. I looked behind him, another buck. Things are finally starting to unfold. So I slowly stand up, look at the lane where I need to shoot, and get ready. Not to shoot these smaller bucks, but thinking there might be a bigger buck behind them. So as I watched these bucks coming closer and closer, they were in perfect position. They came right past my stand where I was hoping the big ones would come, met up with the other trail, offered a broadside or quartering away shot, and I let them go out to the field and feed. No longer after they got to the field, started feeding, I look down below me and I see a bigger buck. Shooter buck right there, within 5-6 yards of my stand. He had come on the second trail that we set up on. We were on a perfect intersection and it was all playing out perfectly. I really like having other deer in the field, and this was looking to be the perfect setup. I had two smaller bucks feeding about 20 yards in front of me and a big shooter buck right underneath me. Now this can also pose a couple of problems. How do you draw with 3 deer inside 20 yards? Well, I had it all planned out in my head. I knew that when this buck got past the limb that I was sitting in, I needed to be at full draw before he got to the other side. Now my first thoughts were, he's not a huge over 160, but he is a nice mature deer. Do I wait? Do I pass? Or should I take him? As this buck came around the corner following the trail I was planning on, it was just perfect. Everything had come together. I had set the stand exactly for this wind, for the deer to follow this direction, and they were doing it. And there's something to be said about bow hunting and seeing your entire plan come together.
That is what opening day in Illinois is all about. 3 bucks. First afternoon out. perfect wind that came right down.
What a great early season buck. We have been fighting warm weather. We couldn't get a buck in Kansas to save our lives. And this guy comes through in Illinois, the third buck of the night, opening day, and I don't know how anyone can pass on a buck like this. I'm getting a little hungry for venison, and wow, what a beautiful main beam sweep around, really nice. There's no way on earth I can pass up something like this.
Tip of the week is brought to you by Can-Am. The facts say a lot, but the ride says it all.
When it comes to tree stand safety, there are a few key points you need to always remember. Number one, you never want to go into a stand without a safety vest. Number two, you want to be extra careful climbing up and down any ladder. This is the number one time when people usually fall out of a stand. So if you use a lifeline system, well, you will prevent that fall going up and down and really will keep you safe going up to your tree stand. And number three, I like to make sure that I have a ladder that goes up beyond where my tree stand is. That way you can easily climb up and step down into your stand. It'll be much more comfortable and you'll never have to worry about pulling your weight up into the stand. Now when it comes to picking the vest, you want to be very careful and pick something that's going to fit for you. I like to use the Hunter Safety Systems vest. The reason why? Well, there's a huge variety to choose from. Now this vest comes with 6 pockets, which makes it very nice to keep your things organized. It also has vinyl accessory straps. It has mesh lining, that way it'll keep you cool and comfortable. Now I like it that they've got a little elastic to keep this vest nice and snug. And not only does it look a little better, but it's much more productive when you're bow hunting. You don't have extra bulkiness going over your clothing. So now you can have a vest that fits you comfortably, will keep you safe in the field, and the bottom line is you'll have a better all-around bow hunting experience.
Winchester's Deadly Passion is presented by Swarovski Optic, North American Hunting Club, Rage Broadheads, Matthews, Can-Am, Wildlife Research Center, and Hot Mox.
I'm headed to Missouri to some private land that I've been fortunate enough to be able to hunt for the last 3-4 years. And I've taken some really good bucks. This is a property that doesn't have much hunting pressure. And the nice thing, I come each spring to reset stands, to scout, and basically look over the farm, figure out what the deer are doing, and make my plan for that. Well, I just arrived in Missouri and I'm checking over the sets that I hung this spring, trying to figure out which one will be the best for this hunt. Now it's hunting, so any of them could be good, but where I'm looking at going tonight oversits a ridge line. Now the acorns are really plentiful right now, and that should put me in prime location. Now I've got a little honey hole on a ridge top, but I need a south wind. So I'm waiting for a couple more days. The forecast is looking for a south wind. Any spot could be good, but I'm thinking I've got an extra good chance there. Sure enough, a doe and fawn came through, a few others, and they were all munching on acorns. The best part, they were coming right by the stand. This stand didn't produce the buck I was looking for, but it's early season and you need to put in your time. Once the winds turned south, well, I headed straight to my favorite stand. This is a ridge-top setup with a pond down below that funnel the deer through. There are 2 big travel corridors that meet up right below my stand. It's a great place to hunt all day. Deer are constantly milling around. It's kind of a staging area for midday between their bedding area and their food source. So it's a place that if you're willing to sit all day early season, which can be tough, it's the place to be. Deer were constantly milling around. Now, there wasn't a big buck in the area, but with enough does, fawns, everything acting calm, I knew this was a perfect setup for a buck just to come walking through. So instead of heading back to the truck and going into town for lunch, I decided to sit all day. It's not easy when it's early season and the temperatures can get pretty hot, but I knew this is a place that could produce a buck walking through at any time. He may just get up out of his bed or plan to head to the bedding area. Either way, I was gonna be on stand because you sure can't kill a buck in town eating lunch. As prime time drew near, I heard what sounded like a Boone and Crockett squirrel come crashing out of the woods. I looked up, no squirrel. A big buck was coming right my way, on the path that would lead him within 10 yards. As I'm watching him come, I'm thinking, how am I gonna get drawn? Where I wanted to draw, he's already been past that point. As much as I want to draw right now and be ready and prepared for the shot, there's no way I can do it. I must wait.
Filming and photography has become more and more popular throughout the hunting community, but there's a great way to film animals from a distance without spooking game. In fact, this can work as an incredible scouting tool as well. There's now a way to attach your camera to your ATX STX modular spotting scope and get professional quality photos and video. No more black edges, fuzzy pictures, just crystal clear images as you see them through your scope. What you're basically doing is using the glass from your spotting scope as your lens. So what you need first is an adapter that fits your camera. If you have a small point and shoot camera, you'll want to use the DCB2. This adapter sits on top of the scope, ready to go while you look through it. Once you find an animal, quickly flip it down, turn your camera on, and start snapping photos or taking video. The other option is an adapter called the TLS APO for any DSLR camera. The adapter attaches to your camera with a T-mount, and you can leave it all set up in your pack. When you see something in your scope you'd like to film, simply pull it out and slide it right over your eyepiece. Now you can either film from afar or snap incredible photos right through your spotting scope with the two new adapters made by Swarovski and your new modular spotting scope.
All day as I've been sitting on stand, I've planned it out in my head. Well, things never seem to work out how you plan. I'm sitting on stand and I hear a big sound off to my left. The next thing I know, I've got a buck coming down the lane the opposite way of what I thought. I know if I don't make a move quickly, I may not get a shot at this buck. But I need to make sure that I make the move at the right time, because if I move a minute too quickly or a little bit early, this buck's gonna bolt. So I let him get through and waited. I got to full draw, waited till my pin was on the vitals, and gave him a soft little bleat.
Bah.
It works perfectly. This buck stopped just at the edge of my shooting lane, and I released the arrow. The arrow sinks straight into the buck, quartering away, and almost 6-7 inches are sticking out, but I know this shot is good.
That buck just came out of nowhere. I looked, he come running. I barely even had time to get nervous on that one. Well, I've decided to give it a good hour. I know the shot was good, but you still should let bucks go once you've made a bow shot. It's just getting dark, so I'm gonna go up here, look for blood, and hopefully find the buck.
Immediately after getting out of the stand, I was on his blood trail.
I've got good blood here, and it was a quartering away shot, so there's no pass through, but with this much blood, I think we're in luck.
You can only see a foot, 2 feet around where your light is glowing. So there may be a big blood splatter up in front, but you're not gonna see it in the dark. And the worst part is if your buck is within eyesight, you won't see it at night. And it can
There's
be
more blood
tough.
here, quite a bit more as we're going.
Well, I see my Luminoc.
It looks like he must have knocked it off with this tree. Come right through here, we've had good blood the whole time. And I can see I got penetration, about good, nice, dark red, long blood. Busted the arrow right off, but that's what's nice about these, you can find them in the dark. And still been stuck in them, we'd be golden, but with this much penetration and this good of blood, I think he's got to be close.
After tracking this deer for a couple hours and marking each blood speck as I went, I just wasn't finding any more blood.
Well, after a couple hours of tracking this buck and marking the blood trail, I just think that the blood is wearing a little too thin and it's really tough at night. So I'm going to ease out of here, and I think in the best interest of finding this buck, that'll be a good thing to come back in the morning. Another sleepless night, but we're doing the right thing.
The next morning, as soon as the sun came up, I was out there on my last blood spot. Now that it's light and the sun was coming up, I could easily see 2 more spots of blood, walked about 5 steps, and there lay my buck.
Right there he is, not 20 yards from my last flag. But it's daylight time, we can see the blood trail, and he looks beautiful. Wow, this guy is even bigger than I thought he was. I only had a few seconds to see him, and I knew he was a shooter. I did see these nice forks here, and this cool character, just a gorgeous, gorgeous deer. And look at this brow, all his tines, nice length, not super wide, but what a perfect Missouri buck. And to set my stand so he came within 10 yards, as a bow hunter, that's about as good as it gets. To set a stand, have a mature deer walk right through, and taking home a prize like this, there couldn't be a better reward. This guy is massive.
Coming up next week on Winchester's Deadly Passion, Melissa heads back to Alaska to try predator calling bear once again. But this time she almost gets more than she bargained for, as her and Jason bring in this giant boar using a piece of flagging tape as a distress call. This huge bear comes in close, too close. He's dominant, hungry, and has no intentions of backing down.